Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. If you like this content, also hit that thumbs up button. It helps me with making these videos. So as the video title says, we're going to be installing a fuel system on the Supra today. And as you may notice, this isn't my Supra. It's one of my buddy's cars. My Supra is over here in the other garage. So it's over here. So like I said, this is my buddy's car. PurdyCars. Go check him out on his channel, his Instagram. I'll also put them in the link below. But we're going to be installing a Radium fuel kit. So do a review as we're installing it. Initially out of the box everything looks nice. This hose, the braided hose wasn't included. Everything looks real nice out of the box. Their hangers, very nice assembly. It came pre-assembled, so I was glad. I thought it was going to come in parts, and I was going to have to take an hour or so putting it together, but it came pre-assembled, very nice quality pieces. Also got their fuel line, or sorry, the fuel line and filter kit for it. Has really nice billet hangers for the fuel filter, and then of course their billet brackets that hold the fuel lines on under the car. Fuel line qualities look nice. I'll be able to review their length and fitment once we install. And then also got the dual fuel pump wiring kit. Comes with relays and some wires, so we'll check all that out here in just a bit. One thing I did notice, so we're installing this to the factory fuel rail for now. We'll upgrade that later. But it came with two dash 10 AN fittings, so it's a dash 10 to a dash 10 ORB. The fuel filter has dash 10 ORBs on each side. The line coming from the fuel pumps is an 8 AN, so it has an 8 AN in, and then they want you to use a 10 AN out. And so I couldn't find a banjo fitting that would work for that. So I was assuming that we're going to be using a 8 AN in and also an 8 AN out, so that kind of messed me up a little bit. So I had to order another one of these fittings, basically the same thing as this, a 10 ORB and an 8 AN. And then that's what I had this stainless line here for. We're going to make the fuel line that's going to go from the filter to the rail, just using some straight 8 AN fittings, and then a length of 8 AN line. So let's get to it. Alright, so first thing we're going to do, since we're going to be messing with electrical components, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the negative side on the battery, just to make sure we don't get any arcing or sparking. And then we're going to come back to the back, go ahead and pull out the spare tire. This was his old fuel pump setup, just an external pump. Had a little bit of troubles with it, so that's why I was wanting to upgrade to the Radium dual tank, or dual pump in tank. So we're going to pull this out and then see if we can get the sender unit pulled out. Alright, and then next we've got 6 10mm nuts we'll take off, and that'll get this access plate off. Alright, so that gives us access to the fuel pump hanger here. Basically what we're going to do, disconnect these lines and then use a flathead screwdriver and tap this ring, tap it to loosen it up, that way we can get access to the hanger. Alright, and then just a close-up. So normally this would be your feed to the fuel rail, this would be the return from the fuel rail, and then this is the vapor vent line. And then of course you have your electrical connector here, the fuel pump wires, and then also the wires for the fuel level dash gauge. So as you can see here, they have the end of the factory feed line tied up here, and then because of the external pump, they have another section of feed line installed. So we're going to have to investigate that. We'll be pulling all that out anyways when we install the new Radium system. So we just take this Phillips head screw out, little clamp that's holding these lines down, and we're just going to set it aside in here. May or may not reuse that later. So we'll pop that clamp off and just set it in here out of the way. And then we'll go ahead and disconnect these spring clamps to get them off of the hanger also. Okay, and then on the fuel feed line, of course it uses the banjo bolt. Make sure you get both of the crush washers. There'll be one below and one above the fitting. Alright, so we've got the ring off now, and then we'll go ahead and pull the assembly out. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and put the Radium pump assembly in, just so we can close off the fuel for now. Okay, so on the Radium assembly, first thing we're going to need to do is swap over the fuel level, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Alright, so here we have the factory unit next to the new Radium unit. Not really sure what's going on here. They've got two fuel levels, so one of them may be bad. We're going to use the one that's currently wired up. We're going to move it over here to the Radium, I think I've been saying the wrong word, Radium assembly. Alright, so we got the new pump assembly sorted out, got everything attached to it. The senders wired up, also the low fuel sensor wired up. When we're installing this, want to make sure you get the pickup tube down into the bucket. You can look, if you get a light and shine down in there, you'll see like a white plastic bucket. So you want to make sure this tube snaps in there, or sits in that bucket. This is the pickup screen, or the filter for the pumps. Pretty nice piece. So we'll get this installed, and then we'll go ahead and remove the factory fuel lines that run all the way underneath the car up to the front. Alright, so now that we've got the hanger seated correctly, we're going to go ahead and put on the retaining ring and then move on to the rest. Or we may go ahead and do the wiring just so it's done also, and then we'll move underneath the car and pull out all the factory harness, or sorry, the factory fuel lines. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and remove the old fuel pump. Alright, so this is what we've got so far. We have the ground, the level warning, and then the signal. So make sure that you're color coded correctly. So the brown, you have the yellow and green, and the yellow and black. Next we're going to wire up the relays. So we'll have one relay driving pump 1 and then the second relay driving pump 2. Right now we're only kept the terminals for pump 3 off since we're not going to be using it. Okay, so we have all the electrical connections made on the fuel pump hangers. We have the fuel level here, we have pump 1 wiring here, pump 2 wiring over here. So we'll go ahead and wire up the relays, get those mounted with the fuses here in the trunk. Alright, so this is kind of where we're at now on the wiring up the relays for the pumps. It looks like a mess still, but we'll get it tidied up once we get everything finished installed. So we're going to run a second power wire up to the battery, of course with a fusible link, to run the second pump. We're just going to follow it routing underneath the car the same way that the original wire runs. So we're going to go underneath the car now and see about removing all of the factory fuel lines. Alright, so we're laying underneath the rear of the car, here next to the exhaust where the muffler is. So this was the old fuel line for the external pump, the wiring for it. So we're going to leave the wire but remove the hose, and then start removing all of the covers for the factory fuel lines, because we'll go ahead and pull the factory feed out, and that runs up over the suspension rear subframe, and then all of the plastic paneling running towards the front of the car. Alright, and then to pull the feed line, basically I took a coat hanger, poked it through the hole this way, taped the end of the hose on it, loosened the two 14mm bolts on the tank straps so the tank will drop a little bit, gives you enough room to pull this up through. And I'll show you the two bolts underneath. One other thing to mention, I always tape over the end of the fuel line to prevent any debris from getting in there. That way we don't have to worry about flushing it once we get it all connected up. Alright, so we used this little 45-degree fitting that was supplied in the kit, and then we're just going to trim the hose. This is the return line, so we're just going to trim it to length. Used a little snap clip again, or spring clip, and then the vent line it'll fit perfectly. So we'll go ahead and fix this and then move back underneath the car. Alright, and then under the hood we're looking at the back of the intake manifold between the manifold and the firewall, and there's a fitting on the back of the fuel rail. I'm trying to point to it. So we're going to loosen it, and that'll allow us to drop that line out, and then we'll go ahead and make the new line that's going to go from the rail to the filter. I wanted to get this line out of the way, and then we'll get the filter mounted underneath the vehicle. Alright, so we've got the fuel rail loose. You can see the line there. Went ahead and took the banjo bolt out. The way that the fuel rail routes, it kind of routes in between the manifold and the engine through this area, and then drops down to go to the filter. So I have to pull the upper section of the intake manifold off to be able to get that stock line out. Alright, so finally got the intake manifold loose. Basically, you have to take all of that upper intake off. There's one bolt, 10mm right there, that's holding the fuel line on. So take that bolt out and then put it all back together. Alright, and then this is the fitting that we're going to use on the factory fuel rail, using the factory bolts, new crush washer, and then 8AN. And then we're going to connect the line that we make up to here. Alright, so back underneath the car, we're going to go ahead and loosely put up the hangers for the fuel line. So we have the new billet hangers, and we're going to utilize the factory hardware, which are these plastic 10mm fasteners. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and put the fuel filter on. So to do that, we're going to remove this little bracket and then install the radium bracket. And this bracket will go like so, using the provided Allen heads. We're just gonna snug it down just enough to hold it for now, because we still have to get the adapter fitting for the end to go to our 8AN line instead of using the 10AN that was supplied in the kit. So now we're going to go back through, tighten all of the hardware on the clamps, and then go ahead and route our additional power wire. It's just going to run next to our existing power wire, so we'll tie those together and route them in the hangers also. Alright, and then one other thing underneath, the ground wire that used to attach to the fuel filter bracket, basically relocated it to attach to the bracket that holds the brake lines. And that's right here by the fuel filters. Alright, so the 14mm bolt to drop the tank a little bit is right there. So I loosened it with just a couple threads holding it on, and then there's another one on the passenger side, or what would be the passenger side, the right hand side of the car. Alright, so I got the second power wire ran all the way up to the battery terminal. I went ahead and re-loomed it with a little bit larger loom since we had two wires going in, and of course the heat shrink connectors. So we'll go ahead and put a fuse in this one so we don't forget, and then that'll wrap it up for the power wires up front and underneath, and then we'll finish the power wires at the relay. Alright, and then this was the part as a banjo bolt and fitting that I used. It's a Vibrant Performance. Here's the part number 11533, and it was an 8AN with a M12 by 1.5 banjo bolt. So I used that on the factory fuel rail, and then we're going to make a dash 8AN braided line with just some Russell swivel end fittings. Alright, so we're going to make the fuel line. This is an 8AN braided line, and Russell fittings. Get these from Summit or Jegs, whatever. Just don't get cheap fittings, because I've had some of the Chinese fittings and they broke when I was trying to make up a hose. So make sure you buy quality fittings. So first what we're going to do, we'll take off the tape on the end from where this hose was cut last. You always tape your cuts, or tape before you cut. That way it holds all the end of the wires in, they don't fray. So we'll take this off, and then take the collar off of the fitting, twist it onto the hose, keep going until it bottoms out all the way. Almost there. Okay, and hard to see, but so that's bottomed out on the shoulder in the fitting, and then we'll take a Sharpie and then we'll make a mark around the base of the collar. That way you can see if the collar pulls away while you're tightening it. So next we'll set this up in the vise. We have these little rubber jaws in the vise, keeps from damaging the fittings. So straighten it up. Okay, and then a little bit of WD-40 in the threads. And then you want to apply pressure toward the fitting on the hose. It just helps it prevent from pushing out sometimes. And then basically just tighten this. Alright, check your mark, didn't move at all, and then we'll give it a tug. Yeah, that's on there, definitely not coming off. Alright, so we'll put this on the car, mock it up, and then we'll go underneath, put a mark on it where we're going to need to trim it. Go ahead and install the other end fitting. It'll be the same style fitting, just a straight, and then that'll connect up to the fuel filter underneath. Alright, so we have it connected, the fuel line connected up to the rail there, just loosely fitted up. Then we're going to route the line below, run it down to the filter just as we're going to install it permanently. That way we can measure and get a correct length. So we'll go underneath, go ahead and put a mark on it, pull the hose back out, tape it, cut it, and put the other end fitting on. Alright, so making the braided line, went ahead and put a piece of tape where we're going to cut it. You can use any type of tape here, painter's tape, something that's not going to leave a lot of residue behind when you peel it off. So basically we're going to take the chop saw, cut right here. You don't want to use a hacksaw. Basically chop saw, something with that particle blade works really well. That way you don't loosen the weave up. So chop saw, cut it. Then we'll flush this tube out because you're going to get little bits of rubber in there. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Put it in a chop saw. We'll get it lined up. Go ahead and slap it down where it's held in place. Make sure you have safety glasses on whenever cutting. And then we're going to hold this so it's straight across. And then we're going to cut it. Okay, and then we're going to go over to the trash can, rinse this out, and so we got a little bit of burrs, but we can fix that when we put that fitting on. So we're going to go ahead and flush this out. All right, so we got the hose flushed out. I'm going to go ahead and pull the tape off. Take the collar off of the fitting. This one's spread out a little bit, so it might be a little difficult getting the collar on here. We'll see though. Take it out of the vise, check the fitting, make sure it didn't back out any. Looks good. We'll give it a tug. Make sure it's not going anywhere. Alright, so that looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and install this on the car. So this end will go to the fuel rail, this end will go down to the fuel filter. Alright, so we're going to finish up the wiring in the back here. Basically we have the second fuel pump power wire to connect. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then lastly, we're going to loom and tidy up all these wires back here, hide the ones underneath here that we can, make sure it looks nice and clean. Then we'll come back and put this top plate on once we're able to test the fuel system, make sure we don't have any leaks on the feed or return line. Alright, so we have all the wiring tidied up here in the back. Routed as much of it under the styrofoam piece on the left hand side as possible. Loomed and zip tied everything else. So last we're going to test the fuel system, make sure we don't have any leaks. And this was the additional fitting that I had to order. It's a 10 ORB to an 8 AN, and this will go from the fuel filter to the dash 8 AN line that we made to the fuel rail. And it's Aeromotive, and there's the part number in case you need it. Alright, that does it for this video. If you enjoyed this content, please click the like button. If you're new around here, hit that subscribe button. If you want some cool t-shirts, check out DIYgarage.com. You can also find us on Instagram, DIY Garage. So, and then my buddy's Instagram, also his YouTube channel, PurdyCars. Check him out. This is his Supra, so we'll see you next video. Thanks for watching.